All right, so now we're going to jump into some notes today, all about looking at the subtraction wording for simple expressions. So go ahead and flip to the next clean page, and at the top, I'd like for you to label it as I have shown, with the date, September 10th, and the title, Simple Expressions. And today, we're going to be writing / interpreting subtraction. All right, next I would like for you to make a T-chart like I have on my page. On the left column, go ahead and write word expression, and on the right, numerical expression. All right, so let's look at one example of how we might see subtraction written in word form. We might see something like this: 5 minus 3. This type of simple expression we've seen since second grade. We know how to write this as a numerical expression: 5 minus 3, just the way that it sounds. That one's easy peasy lemon squeezy. Let's look at another one. What about subtract 8 from 10? Subtract 8 from 10. Anytime we see that from when talking about subtraction, that's a key word there. It tells me that my numerical expression is going to be written backwards from the way that I say it. In the way that we say it, subtract 8 from 10, we see the 8 first. But what this is actually telling us is that we're starting with 10 and we're going to take away 8. For instance, if we're talking about money, subtract $8 from $10. Well, you start with the $10 and you take $8 away from you, leaving you with 2. So when we write it as a numerical expression, we would write the 10 first. 10 minus 8. This gets a lot of students confused. When they see something like this, they see the word subtract and they see the 8 in front of the 10. And so they want to write it like that. That we cannot do because this is subtracting 10 from 8. And we need to subtract 8 from 10. So that from tells us, write it backwards from the way we see it. Let's look at another example. Sometimes we might see something like this: 2 less than 6. Just like that word from, when we see less than, that tells us that this subtraction problem has to be written backwards from the way we say it. 2 less than 6 is written 6 minus 2. Because think about it logically. What's 2 less than 6? Like, if you had $6 and I had 2 less dollars than you, what would I have? I would have $4. Well, that's 6 minus 2. So when we say 2 less than 6, what we mean is this equation. Are you starting to understand? Do you see how subtraction can be a little bit tricky? Let's look at another example. Sometimes we might read something like take 4 from 9. Did you see it? That's right. We have another from. When we see from in relation to a subtraction equation, again, it tells us to flip-flop the numbers. Take 4 from 9 is written 9 minus 4. That from tells me to flip-flop the way that I say it and write it. Because we're taking 4 from 9, we start with the 9. Let's look at one more. the difference between seven and 3. Well, we know difference. That's our vocabulary word, meaning the answer to a subtraction problem. So the difference between 7 and 3 is simply 7 minus 3. But we're going to remember to put it into parentheses because it means solve me first. Find the answer. All right, so these are all of the different ways that you might see subtraction written as a simple expression in words, and how we should write it as a numerical expression. Notice 5 minus 3 and the difference between 7 and 3. So when we see minus or we see difference, we're going to write it the same way we say it. 5 minus 3, 5 minus 3. But if we see from or less than, subtract, take away, or take from, those are going to be written flip-flopped, where the first number that we see is actually going to be the number at the end. Let's look at a couple examples to make sure we understand what we're doing. All right, our first example is here. If you need to pause the video to write this down before moving on, please do so. Our problem says take the product of 5 and 4 from 31. So we're going to use our chart to help us figure out how to write this subtraction portion of the simple expression. Now, we already see product. Product tells us multiplication. But we see the take from. Take from. The take from is going to tell me subtraction. And that from, there it is right there, take from. So it tells me that I'm going to need to write it backwards. What I see first needs to go at the end of the subtraction equation. So what does it say? It says take the product of 5 and 4 from 31. So if I go over here, take 4 from 9. So 9 was what we put on the front, even though it was the end. So this tells me from 31, I need to put 31 at the beginning. And then what am I going to take from it? Well, up here, I took the 4 because it says take 4 from 9. So here it says take the product from 31. So I know I write product as multiplication. The product of what? 5 and 4. Take the product of 5 and 4 from 31. Take the product, there's the product, of 5 and 4 from 31. Do you see how we can use our chart to help us make sure we're writing our equation correctly? Make sure you're highlighting and underlining just like me. Let's try one more. All right, our second equation or expression says 2 less than the quotient of 20 and 5. Again, pause the video to write it down if you need. 2 less than the quotient of 20 and 5. Well, right away I see quotient, and that's one of my vocabulary words. If I go back in my journal, I can see that quotient is the answer to a division problem. So I know quotient is going to tell me I need a division symbol in my equation. I also see less than. Less than, that's one of my subtraction words that I might see. Less than also tells me to flip-flop. 2 less than 6 is written 6 minus 2. Well, down here it says 2 less than the quotient. So I need to flip-flop it. The 2 should be at the end. The quotient is division, should be at the beginning. The quotient of what? 20 and 5. So here's my quotient. 2 less than the quotient. 2 less than the quotient. All right, friends. So those are 2 examples of how we can use our subtraction chart to help us make sure that we're writing the subtraction portion of simple expressions correctly. You're going to use this chart as you move into your Class Kick lesson assignment and when you're working on your OYO formative assignment. Good luck. Think about it logically. Use your notes. I'll see you tomorrow.